Welcome to another episode of the Charlie Spice Show. This is going to be such an exciting conversation. In the studio with me is Dr. Myrna Lashley, who, by the way, is from Barbados, believe it or not,
Yes,
but
yes,
lives in Montreal, Canada, and is the associate professor at the university, Mcgill University. That name is familiar to many people in Barbados. There's a location on the west coast of McGill University, and
that's
I think
right.
they do marine biology
Yes,
studies there.
to do marine research. It's the Bel
That's correct.
Air at Bel Air.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Well, Dr. Lashley, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to join us this evening. And
Thank you for having me.
you're more than welcome. I'm going to allow you to say a few words. I'm I'm excited to hear more about you. We talked earlier today, but we did not get into the accolades of Dr. Myrna Lashley. So, for the benefit of the audience who may not have heard about you before, and I should also say at this point, Dr. Lashley is the individual who participated in an interview with the Nation newspaper last week about the benefits of decriminalizing or legalizing sex work in Barbados.
Yes, I
Dr.
am.
Lashley, for the benefit of those listening, tell us a bit about you, particularly your journey from Barbados to Montreal.
Okay. I was born in Barbados. Actually, I was born in Licorice Village in my Lord Sale, and
Hmm.
grew up with the formative years of my life were spent
Yeah.
with my paternal grandmother and my father and my great aunt
Yeah.
in the Bayland in Kerwins Avenue.
Wow. Okay.
Not far from Gary Sobers, and there's a familial situation there between his family and mine, but we won't go into that. And and I remember when he would come home and I would go by and he'd wave at me through the window. It was
Yes. Yes.
kind of nice. And then I went to live with my mom and my stepfather, the most wonderful stepfather anybody could ever have. I mean, I think about him and my face just lights up when I get all warm inside because he was such a magnificent human being, and he loved us tremendously. Never felt unloved by that man. Never raised a hand to us. Nothing like that. Everybody should have a father like that.
Mm.
And went to the modern high school.
Okay.
Yeah, went to the modern high school. Actually enjoyed my time there a lot. Moved to Montreal to be with my dad, who had
Mhm.
came here, finished high
Yeah.
school up here. Um, I actually was in the Canadian Navy.
Oh, that's interesting.
I was in the Canadian Navy. I used to be an oceanographer.
Okay.
And I used to be an oceanographer, and I studied at Key West Sonar School in Florida,
Yeah.
and went back and worked out of Nova Scotia, out of a remote place called Shelburne as an
Yeah.
oceanographer.
Yes.
Eventually left the service. I came back to Montreal, got married, decided I wanted to refocus, didn't want to be a scientist anymore.
Hmm.
So I went to Concordia University and did another undergraduate as in specializing in psychology. Then I
Hmm.
moved to McGill to do graduate work,
Okay.
did my master's in counseling psychology, and did my PhD, followed with my PhD in biomedical and legal ethics, a double in biomedical and legal ethics and clinical psychology.
Wow.
I,
Wow.
yeah, I teach at McGill,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
I was the chairperson of the it was called the Cross Cultural Roundtable on National Security for the country.
Yes.
I do a lot of work with the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. But yeah,
Mhm.
I was the one
Mhm.
who was helping to lead the federal government in its position on radicalization and national security. So I'm also the honorary consul from Barbados to Montreal.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. You mentioned just now that um, your 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 guardian did not raise a hand to you, but what I remember when I was a kid, I'm telling you, I got the strap on many occasions. I got the rod,
Yeah, I
the
don't
belt.
approve of that. I don't approve of that. And neither did my stepfather. I think my mother hit me once in my life, and
Yeah.
my stepfather and I were so furious with her. you know. And
Hmm.
actually, my mom died several years ago. But before my mom died, my stepfather and I were talking to her, and my mom actually said, "Look, I'm sorry, I hit you. I shouldn't have done that."
Oh,
And
that's very nice. That's
yeah,
very nice. Okay, let us get a little closer to the subject matter here. How did you? How is it that you became the interviewee for that article last week in the
well,
Nation?
I've actually done a lot of interviews in the nation, uh,
Hmm.
and with Tony Best. And Tony actually, his aunt lived two doors down from where I lived in
Yeah.
Mears Road in My Lord's Hill. So Tony and I have
Yes.
known each other
Mm.
since we were kids. But
Mm.
Tony frequently calls me from New York and
Yeah.
asks me to do interviews for him. So I've done lots of interviews for the nation. So Tony
Mm.
knows that I have as I said, my PhD is in biomedical and legal ethics. I have
Yes.
a very strong streak in terms of human rights and the
Yeah.
protection of the other and children. And so Tony called me and said, "What do you think about this?" And I think it was about
Mm.
11 o'clock at night when he called me.
Okay. Okay. Well, for years now, I have been touting and lobbying and advocating for decriminalization. I've written a paper on the, some of the benefits that can be derived some time ago, and it, it all fell on deaf ears. And I could only imagine that it is too much of a hot potato subject. I
Hmm.
was a hot potato subject. I have questions about that now, in light of what has recently happened. But I could only imagine it was too hot. It was not considered politically expedient. No one wanted to lose any political currency by handling such a hot potato subject as a result, vis-a-vis or religious the religious position held by the churches and so on. What is your feeling on the fact that the Honorable Kirk Humphrey has come out and boldly made statements of about protecting sex workers and with a view to decriminalizing? What are your thoughts on that?
I applaud Minister Humphrey. I really do. I am very cognizant of his constituents.
Mhm.
Obviously of his constituency, but particularly of his constituents. I know which area he represents, and the area he represents is not far from Bush Hill.
Yeah.
And it was also, when I was a child, it was an area which was vulnerable. And
Hmm.
there were people there who were impoverished,
Yeah.
and I suspect that quite a few of them may have had repair to using to engaging in sex work to survive. The
Yeah.
other thing is that Minister Humphrey is very much loved by his constituents. They adore him.
Yes.
And so if anybody was going to say it and come out of it relatively unscathed, it would be
Yeah.
Minister Humphrey. I
Mhm.
also do not, and as you said, it's a hot potato. So I don't think that this is a statement which would have been made without the support of the governing body
Yes.
of the party in power.
Yeah.
And it may actually be a trial balloon. It may be, let's see how this goes. But the death of this poor, unfortunate lady, and I don't say unfortunate because of her trade. I say unfortunate because somebody took her life, took the life of this
Yes.
lady with four children.
Mhm.
It may be the kind of moment in Barbados in terms of sex work, which fills the role of George Floyd in terms of the larger Black Lives Matter movement. It could be the catalyst
Okay.
for
Okay. Mm-hmm.
change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's fantastic, and I applaud Minister Henry. Um,
There is there is concern that this may just be a, a publicity stunt to gain some momentum and political capital or currency. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's
Look,
any?
well, I can't say what's in anybody's mind,
Yeah.
but if it were so, it would be an extraordinarily callous
Mhm.
move to
Yes,
make.
I agree.
And this is not like, I don't live in Barbados, so I have I have no dog in this hunt,
Yes.
no political dog in this hunt.
Mhm.
I have never gotten the feeling from this government that they are going to engage in deliberately callous
Yeah.
behaviors. And were this to be so, they will pay a terrible price because there are a lot of sons and daughters who are engaged in this activity for a myriad of reasons.
Yes.
Everything from you've got to, you may be feeding, you may have to contend with an addiction habit, all the way up to it's a luxury lifestyle and it's my body and I can do what I want with it. I mean, there's no one reason why
Yes.
people enter into the sex trade. But the fact is that there are a lot of people who are engaged in this. You go around the garrison every night. My goodness gracious, it's
Mhm.
sad, and it's not sad because of what they're doing, but sad because they could be harmed and there is no protection for them.
Yes.
Also, we've got to be honest.
Hmm.
There are a lot of people using the services.
Yes.
People who we don't want to think that they are, but life is life, and it's the oldest profession in the world. I mean, it's this has
Mm.
gone on since the beginning of time. Why should Barbados be any different?
Yes. Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
other thing is, as I said to you today, it's not the only thing, but there are other issues, is that we all know more people engaged in the sex industry than we think we do. But
Yes.
because we've stratified it
Yeah.
such that those at the top, who are known as escorts or
Hmm.
um, Mayflowers. I'm thinking about the Mayflower Madam in Boston, for example.
Yeah.
And of course during the time of the Chinese Emperor and Japanese emperors, we had courtesans, but we had those in the courts in Babylon also. We had the courtesans, and
Yes.
they were venerated, and the king had a courtesan. You wanted to get to his or her ear because not every
Hmm.
person with whom people lie is of the opposite sex. So you wanted to get, that's where the power was. The
Yes.
power was in the pillow, not in the person
Hmm.
billowing through the corridors with their hoop
Hmm.
skirts or
Yeah.
tight pants. You wanted to get to the person who put laid their head on the pillow next to the king or the
Hmm.
queen.
Yes.
And so why should Barbados be any different? Yeah, the
Hmm.
other thing is it's not only men who use the services of sex workers. Women use those workers too.
Of course.
And for several different reasons. I said to you today that Emma um, Thompson's last movie is about a lady who needs comfort in her life. She wants sexual comfort. She's alone. She's been alone for a long time. Human
Yeah.
beings were not meant to spend years and years and years alone. And
Mhm.
she wants solace. And she
Yes.
reaches out and she hires someone to come and give her what she needs.
Yeah.
We
Hmm.
also, sex therapists
Hmm.
often will make repair to um, to sex workers if the parties, both parties, agree to it so that nothing is being forced on everyone. Some
Yeah.
people do it because I don't know what I'm doing in bed. Let's get somebody in here to help us or to
Yes. Hmm.
fulfill our fantasies.
Hmm.
It happens. So if we're going to call ourselves a modern society,
Hmm.
let's let's look modernity in the face.
Let me interject at this point. For the benefit of those who just joined us, I'm having a conversation with Dr. Myrna Lashley from Montreal, Canada, who is an associate professor at Mcgill University, and we're talking about sex work, and we're going to shortly be introducing some dialogue on the benefits of decriminalizing or legalizing sex work in Barbados.
Mhm.
So thank you all for tuning in. If you want to pose any questions to Dr. Lashley, you're free to do so. You can send me a message in the chat room, or you can actually come into the studio momentarily to pose a question or two before going back out. Now, hypocrisy has played such a major role in our culture forever.
Mhm.
How do you see this? We're going to talk about the benefits of legalization afterwards, but how do you see this being a challenge going forward to any attempt at decriminalizing
Well,
sex work in Barbados?
let's just say that I work. I'm in the Department of Psychiatry, and I put that to frame that
Yeah,
because I work within the area of mental health. Right?
yeah,
I deal with hypocrisy all the time.
yeah,
Sex and sexuality has always engendered hypocrisy.
yeah.
People talk about the health benefits of sex, and there are myriad.
Mm,
There are many, many health
yeah.
benefits of sex.
Hmm.
People talk about the health benefit of companionship, of social
Yeah.
interaction,
Hmm.
but the what is necessary to do those things? We often pretend as though these things just occur through osmosis.
Yeah.
In fact, you in many you need another body or you need self-help. But whether it's self-help
Yeah.
or in the company of someone else, it's an act that takes place. And for most people, the most satisfying act is with
Hmm.
someone else. So there's a certain hypocrisy built in when we recognize that there's a biological function and a biological need and a mental health need
Yeah.
that's important with sexuality, but then we want to pretend that there's something nasty and
Hmm.
ugly about sexuality. And every society has done this.
Yeah.
Barbados is not different. Every society is like is and what that does, it has driven sex and sexuality in and of itself underground. We don't even talk to our children about sexuality and about how their bodies change and about
Hmm.
hormonal changes. And
Yeah.
then we don't talk to them. We don't get them the care they need. They don't get the talks and
Yes.
and the care that they need in terms of their sexuality and how to adjust to it. And then we
Hmm.
say, well, how she get pregnant?
Yes.
Because we didn't talk to the child, or we didn't talk to the boy. Nobody recognized that this boy needed to have condoms, that he was going through hormone
Mhm.
change, or that young girls needed.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there's always been this hypocrisy built in around sexuality, which we need to confront.
I've just been sent a message by Jarrett Antrobus, who is a concerned citizen, a friend of mine as well. He's not part of the sex industry in Barbados, but he is definitely concerned about what's going on, and he's on the same page as we are in terms of the need to look at decriminalizing. So I'm going to invite Jarrett to join us. Uh,
Sure.
he has a number of questions and comments to share with us. So let's have Jarrett join us. Good evening, Jarrett. How are you doing this evening?
Charlie. Good evening. This is Lashley. Nice
Hello.
to meet you. I'm pretty sure you may know, if not of her, my mom Peggy.
Peggy Antrobus?
Yes,
Don't think I met her. Where would I have met her?
she's heavily involved with the Women and Development program in Barbados and
Okay.
internationally. She's part of
Okay.
one, a network, which is where my sensibility and sensitivity towards, I guess, the protection of women in general, especially violence towards women and
Yeah.
discrimination against women, and all of the ills that women have endured at the hands of men over time.
Hmm.
So,
And other women.
pardon, and
And
women,
other women
and
sometimes.
other women, very very much so. And I mean, I want to also say, I'm part of both of your current university and Concordia. I went to
Oh,
school at both Mcgill and Concordia in Montreal. I'm from Montreal myself, so I mean,
nice.
fabulous. I mean, great to know that you're the consul as well, so that if I'm stuck in Montreal, even though I'm a Canadian, it's good to know I can call on the
Yep.
Belgian consul that's there.
Yes.
I feel left out here now. I feel like I don't even belong in this conversation. Huh?
But as long as somebody brings me a conky.
Yeah,
Okay. I'll do that. I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Charlie could do that. But I mean, Charlie and have talked about this, over the years, and I've seen how it works in Canada. I realize that even though it is under the umbrella of illegality, still, I would say, there are ways in which both men and women are able to engage in the sex industry in Canada and have certain protection whilst being involved in that industry. The laws, I think, are not as liberal as the laws in say Germany and Holland might be,
No, they're
but
not.
for a Commonwealth country, it presents an interesting precedent for all
Hmm.
of us with regard to how we could actually draft a legal framework that could work here in the Caribbean.
Hmm.
Charlie was talking earlier about Kirk and especially his constituency, because I mean it would start that would be the constituency he ran again, or Natalie ran against him in,
Yeah.
right? And Natalie ran particularly on that platform of being a sex worker and a well-known sex worker in
Yes, she
Barbados.
did well. Yes.
And she garnered votes and she got support. And I think one thing she wouldn't have won, but she definitely brought the whole sex industry front and center.
Yes, she did.
I could not avoid it. And I mean,
Hmm.
people were amazed at how she was able to present herself in a way that, if you're driven by um, where she is by the garrison, you'd never, see Natalie in this light.
Hmm.
Uh, Again, kudos to him, because he's really, out of all of the politicians, the only one that I've ever seen put himself out there like this. And like you said, I mean, he comes from a very, I mean, we wouldn't say it's a wayward community, but there are quite a few elements within that constituency that I say would run a little left of the law.
Yeah. Hmm.
And he's well aware of that, and
Hmm.
and they're well aware of it too.
Hmm.
Uh, I think we're at a stage now where having the parliament constitute, Mia having a complete control of parliament, really, they have a unique chance here to actually draft meaningful law. We've put out quite a few COVID laws over the COVID time, and we
Hmm.
noticed how quickly those were able to be, brought to the lower house and then passed in law quite
Hmm.
rapidly. So I mean, the support has to be island wide, yes, but you know, the sex trade is island wide.
Exactly.
It is not just relegated to one parish or another.
Right.
It is in every parish. I mean, the last discussion we had, we highlighted, the venues for the prostitution in Barbados. I mean, they vary from private homes to Airbnbs to hotel rooms to, wherever. Could be a cane field, for all we know. But I mean, it is all over, and I think COVID definitely bolstered the industry, where a lot of women and men, obviously they were finding themselves in a curfew situation. under restrictions themselves. It was a very unique set of circumstances that allowed them to navigate this this terrain. And
Hmm.
one factor, obviously, that would have been the greatest factor in it all would have been the heightened levels of stress, and the definite stress relief that is offered by the sex workers. I mean, it is about
Alice,
some of that to a certain degree,
if
if
I
not
may
a lot of it.
interject, if I may interject, I want to. I'm very conscious of time, so I want to invite Dr. Lashley to explain to the audience the benefits, health, economic benefits, the reduction in criminality. Let's talk a bit about that for a minute. At this stage, what are some of the things you would like to share with the viewers about the benefits of legalizing? And Jared, feel free to jump in at any point with any questions or comments.
Okay. Well, there's several. The health benefits, I've already alluded to those. Um, Sex is one of the best stress reducers we've ever known. I mean, there are hormonal things which occur in your body when this is going on, when the act is going on. There's also the need for human beings to connect with each other. That sense of someone cares about me, I care about one. That exchange is not simply an exchange of bodily fluids. It's we know that there are neurotransmitters that change when people are engaged in sexual activity, and what this does for them. We know it's a good thing.
Yeah,
We also know that if you if you decriminalize or legalize this, you save lives. You don't only save the life of the sex worker, but you actually save other lives, not just the life of the buyer and the seller. So let's take a hypothetical situation. Let's say that, for the sake of argument, a man goes and spends some time with a sex worker and has unprotected sex. She doesn't care, he doesn't care, $15, because we've got different strata
yeah,
of sex workers, and we can talk about that after. So you spend some money, you do what everything, but you haven't. This person with whom you're sleeping has not been tested. You don't know what the STI, the sexually transmitted um, infections are with this person, and you take that home and you give that to your wife. Now, let's say, for the sake of argument, that unbeknownst to the man, the wife may also be seeing somebody on the side and has something else going on. It
yeah,
does happen. So you started the process of the transmission of sexually transmitted infections. But even if she isn't, you still take it home. Let's say that from your partnering with her, she becomes impregnated.
yeah,
We know we know empirically that certain things get passed through into the fetus. We know that
mhm,
percentage, that this crossing over that and goes into the fetus. We know this happens. So you're not only saving the life of the two people engaged, you're extending that life longevity beyond. There's also the fact that, in terms of economics, we know that most societies, especially post COVID, they're having a hard time financially. And even in the so called developed nations, you look at Canada, United States, England, well, for
yeah,
goodness sake, COVID took a big hunk out of the monies. And also, we're supporting the Ukraine.
mhm,
A
yeah,
lot of our monies are going to the Ukraine. I'm not complaining about that, but that's a fact. If somebody is engaged in an industry, in a sex work or whatever, some other industry, and they're paying taxes, that's money going into the coffers to help pay for things like the education of children. They have free education in Barbados, free healthcare, all those other things. It helps to pay for it.
Yeah.
You save lives in as much as if you legalize this, if you decriminalize this, less possibility of this man or woman having to work around Bush
Yeah.
Hill. You
That's right.
save that
Yeah.
person's life also. Then there's also the children. Right now, you've got four motherless children out there. What kinds of stigma and indignity
Yeah.
are being visited upon those children because now everybody in their neighborhood and everybody in the country knows your mom was working in this field and she's been killed. You are now the child of a prostitute for
Yeah.
all that that entails in the minds of some people. To visit the so-called sins of the parent upon the
There
child.
may be even different fathers.
Exactly. And I ain't looking after that one because you might have do this. And I was telling you about my stepfather earlier, whom I absolutely adored. But not everybody has that.
Yeah.
So there are a myriad of reasons why this is the right thing to do. Above and beyond that, allow me a few more seconds. The World Health Organization, Amnesty International, UN AIDS, all of these agencies have come out and said it is time to decriminalize and or legitimize this work. These workers can then be subjected to 6 months medical examinations.
Yeah.
Again, you're going to save lives because you can pick up the illness as soon as it occurs and either take them out of service and get them cured or give them a free bill. I mean, there's so many ways that this is the right thing to do.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Jerry, is there anything you would like to add to that before we invite Dr. Lashley to continue?
We're talking about the government involvement and the taxation side of things, which I think is absolutely necessary. I mean, um, one of the challenges I think Bajans face right now is that if you are an independent worker, it's very difficult for you to organize your life and get into a retirement type situation
Absolutely.
with a
Yeah.
pension plan or join, particularly join the NIS.
Hmm.
And I think this government has been trying to draft legislature that will allow for that to happen. Obviously, it also brings them uh, um, more people into the tax net
Yeah.
if they're able to actually generate this, or people contributing to their pension plans. I mean, the NIS is sitting on a very precarious position right now. I mean, they've been borne upon heavily, and I mean, there's a lot of talk that's been thrown around now where they may not have the money to pay people's pensions, particularly
Hmm. Hmm.
public workers in specific, um, and for everybody that contributes to the NIS in general. So I think it is important that through legalization or legislation, these women and men, as you've alluded to, find themselves in a position where they're contributing to the society in terms of their tax.
And they get in healthcare now too. They get paying for your healthcare.
They would get healthcare anyway just by being.
Exactly, but they're not contributing
No, they're not.
if
They're
they're
not.
around the garrison,
Yeah.
and they're not registered.
And or if they're working in a club. I mean,
Exactly.
all of this is part and parcel. I mean, they actually do contribute, but they contribute to the club, and the
Yes.
club themselves. Many of those businesses don't pay tax,
Exactly.
and because of that, even though the women may pay the $50 um, to be able to be in the club every night or whatever they pay on a fee on a weekly basis. I mean, they don't see even protection for this money. I mean, all they're really doing, in my mind's eye, is paying into an exploitation network. Because in
Precisely.
many cases, these same girls are then taxed on their sex work too. So I mean, it creates a very unequitable situation, if I
And we
want to put
focus on the women. We focus on the sellers,
it
not
on the
on the
side.
buyers.
Not on the buyers. No.
not on the buyers, on the sellers. So your husband leaves and goes in the garrison and he gets to walk away scot free. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, look at this woman who was killed, right? She paid with her life. How many men before that person had done? We don't even know she'd been abused before. I suspect that
No.
she might have been because
Yeah.
she's working the garrison. She's not working the hotel. It's not an escort service. So
Yeah.
she hasn't got that protection. And we don't know why people are doing this. How do we know that she wasn't getting money from any of those four men? And she was out there trying to keep those children from having to do what she's doing. She's trying to give
Correct.
them a better life. Look,
Yeah.
I went to university, one of the universities I attended. I won't say which one because I went to three of them, but it doesn't matter. I went to a university and well, we were in school, and there was this one young lady in the class with us, and she used to say to us, you're going to come out of school, and you're going to owe your school loan, which is true. I came out of school, and I had like an $8,000 loan to pay. She came out of school owing nothing. Why? Because she had three persons, and these three persons looked after her. They paid her rent and everything. And they knew each other and they knew which night was theirs. She always had her weekends free.
Very smart woman.
She always had her weekends free. She is a very well known person in Montreal. So I'm not going to say what she does or who she is. But she came out of university owing 0 cents, nothing. The
Mm,
rest of us came out and said, as Bajans would say, Wallace, how I can pay this now?
mm,
But
mm.
Montreal is different, though. Montreal, out of all of the cities in Canada, that is entirely possible. I had quite a few friends at
it was in
university
Montreal. Yeah,
that paid their way through university, either in dancing in the clubs or
exactly.
I even had a roommate. He was a Chippendales dancer, so
Or then,
he was a male dancer, and
yeah,
he made a lot of money.
exactly. Well, Quebec
Now,
is known for that. We're more open.
Quebec is very liberal.
allow me to interject here. I think one of the things that we're going to have to do some research and point out to government is the actual number of people involved in this industry. Because as long as people think, not just the government, but people who are the protagonists when I do articles and so on, as long as they think it's just a handful of people on Bushel
Mhm,
and
mhm,
Bay Street, the government and the populace will not see the need to have these discussions that we're having.
mhm.
And I don't need to do research to know that we could be looking in excess of 5,000-6,000 people in
Oh,
John,
Barbados in
absolutely.
this
how do you
industry
do
or
that?
more.
How do
But
Oh,
you
we
do
sure.
need to do that
that?
research.
How
Okay.
can you do the research?
I'm
I mean,
sorry.
I think the challenge is how can you do a constructive survey that's going to legitimately give you the figures that you need. I mean, I think that's where we need to start.
That's
Is
where we need to start. But first, we have to take away the stigma. Even before we do legitimization, we have to
Yeah,
take away the stigma so that people can answer the anonymous. It has to be anonymous. The anonymous survey know that their data are going to be kept safe, and that there will be no repercussions. No one will try to find out. We've
Yeah.
got to educate the populace to, as Charlie said, to understand this is not something that's residing simply at the lower level, so-called lower
Yeah.
level of
Mhm.
society. And that's one reason I want to get rid of the word prostitution,
yeah,
because it carries a certain stigma to it. We think of the prostitute as that man or woman just walking down the street, maybe stoned out of their mind, and and they
definitely.
just selling themselves for whatever. Prostitute, call
Mhm.
girls, escorts,
Escort, yeah.
courtesans.
Sex workers.
So, yeah, they're right up at the top, and they're all sex workers.
Yeah.
But we don't think about the talk because we think that prostitution, it has that negative vibe to it, such that we believe it's only certain people would get involved in this, only poor people, only people without education. But it goes through the entire community and has always done so.
Yeah,
Well,
I
Barbados would have been the first of these islands to actually have that trade go on, being one of the first you know seaports and major shipping.
Exactly.
I mean,
And how do we continue? How do we continue praising Rachel Pringle and
yeah,
putting her on postcards and saying the
yeah,
great? As I heard lately, someone's going to do a show about her or a play or something. So we're going to, on the one hand, glorify this lady and talk about her sagesse in making money and those things. And but on the other hand, we're going to put down her professional, she ran other women, but we're going to
well,
do that.
yeah,
It doesn't make sense.
mhm,
yeah,
mhm. I would like to say that politicians at large, most people in Barbados are aware of the benefits because
Of
so many
course.
studies have been done over the years in so many different countries. So people do know the benefits, but we have the only way this is going to be accomplished is by taking a look at our cultural differences and our cultural nuances, particularly the hypocrisy and the pretense and so on that exists here. Because we are a small country, we have to look at how it can relate to Barbados and what our politicians want to enable them to make this decision. I don't think it is because it was done in Germany it can be done here, because it was done in
No, no,
Canada.
no, of course
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
who have you engaged at UE, Charlie? Because I mean, I would think a survey like this would really have to be mounted um, from the University of the West Indies. And the reason why I say that is that we're one of three campuses in the region, and
Yeah.
obviously our campus has its own specific departments. I mean, we have a very strong psychology department. We have a sociology. We have all of the ologies, so to speak,
Mhm,
that could actually really sink their teeth into a subject matter like this. And I
mhm.
think the current head of the university, I think she would be quite. It's important you get to her, is what I mean. And I think that if we can get to her, and we can get the university involved, and have the students of the university actually carry out the survey and ratify it under the substantial auspice of being part of the University of the West Indies.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Dr. Lashley, what do you think should be the strategy going forward for the government to address this seriously?
Well, I think you first have to get your numbers. And once you've got your numbers, you have to have some kind of plan in place. But then you need follow-up measures. So you need a base rate first.
Mhm.
You need to
Yeah.
get your numbers. You need to have a plan that fits in also to the zeitgeist of the population. And it may be that you go the way Canada has gone, which is why Canada did it that way, tax the buyers, not the sellers, protect the sellers. You may have to start, you may do it that way. I don't think what's being done in Germany and the Netherlands,
Germany has
I do, but I don't think that that would work to begin with. It may come to that, but I really think because it's the sellers who are being harmed, who are being killed. So I think once you put your plan in place, you then have to have a time limit on the first section of it. Like from here to here, we're going to put it in place and then we're going to measure. But in order to measure at time two, you need to know what you have at time one. And you can see, has there been a reduction in in violence against women? Has there been a reduction in movement around the garrison? But movement into a more secure place? Are there guards in place? Are these men and women protected? You have to put all those things in place. And then you have to be able to measure them and say to the populace, look, we did this. These are the numbers we were saying before. These are the types of violence. These are what was going on. Since we've done that, we've cut down the violence by this much. More women, we've cut down STIs
Right.
because we've made it mandatory that the men and women who are engaged in this must have a medical certificate
Exactly.
every 6 months.
Right.
And so we've cut down the amount of transmissible diseases within
Right.
the community. I mean, there are all of these measures that you have to put into place so that you know what you've got. Is it working or is it not working?
Okay, Jared, what would you add to that in terms of a suggestion for government to take this forward? What else can you add to what Dr. Lashley has said?
I'm going to speak from a position of fear, right?
Of
And
fear?
fear, and the fear is right that
Yeah.
information once gathered will not be used in the way it should be used, and could
Mhm.
actually turn around and be used against the workers rather than for them. Uh,
Okay.
and it's a concern that I have based on the way the Bayesian mind works, or
Okay.
the West Indian mind in general. And I mean, I read a harrowing article today, which revolved around a video that was circulated with a man beating the mother of his child in a setting where obviously the person recording the video was the child itself. And the man trying to take the woman into the room and to get her to go into the bedroom to be punished,
Oh, mercy.
and I mean, Peter Wickham alluded to it on his on Brass Tacks today. I
Mhm.
think the end result of it is that the man is now assisting the police.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I mean, what struck me twofold is that the fear was that were Peter to have brought voice to the incident, that it could have backfired and negatively impacted the woman who was being victimized by this man. Now, oddly enough, that is not what happened.
Mhm.
What happened was is that the man was obviously picked up rather quickly
Mhm.
and is assisting the police in this matter. So, I mean, it seems to me that, even though there is that Peter had the thought himself, and that thought does exist, can
Mhm.
you trust in the
Mhm.
authority to do the right thing at the right time?
But
And
that's where you need Dale Marshall to be very, very strict in what he expects of the police and others.
yeah,
Um, and as you said, the woman was not victimized in this video. I do believe also that the Bajan character is changing. Um, it's not what it was when we were kids.
no,
You know, you've got young people now who have a strong sense of human rights, and this is a human rights issue.
yeah,
You've got young people who've got a strong sense of human rights and who are saying, thus far and no further. You've got a strong feminist movement now, a lot
especially
of
the women,
feminist
especially the
psychology.
women. Yeah, I would,
Exactly.
yeah.
There's a
Not
strong
much
feminist
men,
psychology
not
out
so
there
much.
now where women are saying enough is enough and they will not back down. A lot of these women found their voices, believe it or not, after the murder of George Floyd and in the Me Too movement.
Yeah,
You know, the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of women found their voices and they don't want to go back. And you
yeah,
will find that there'll be a lot of women, especially up at the university, and they're more educated now. They've been
yeah,
exposed to
right.
more information. They're not looking at things in a parochial sense of only here in Barbados that we have to keep this stuff. They're looking outwards. They're traveling. They're seeing things, and they're not going back. So I suspect
There's quite a few of those students in UWI that are sex workers too.
exactly.
Yeah,
And I suspect that Minister Humphrey, don't forget, he's from that young generation also.
he is.
that he is probably more in tune with the new Barbadian zeitgeist, the new Barbadian character,
Mhm.
than any of us is.
There are a number of
Serve too.
benefits. There are a number of benefits that the Irish person will probably not realize, and I'm
Mhm.
going to allude to these benefits now, and I would like to get some feedback from you, from from the panel. Uh, when government moves in the direction of decriminalizing, and then they have actually done so,
Mhm.
it is going to send a message to women all over the world that Barbados is a lot more inclusive and
Exactly.
more tolerant of these individuals, and there's going to be a dramatic increase in migration of sex workers from all over the world into Barbados. This will bring about more investment in terms of people wanting to set up um, more gentlemen's clubs, strip clubs, and places. How do you guys respond to this from the Beijing perspective?
How do they get a work permit?
Exactly. They have to get the work permit.
Yeah,
And don't forget that you as they do in Germany and the Netherlands and other places, you have areas. I mean, if you go to Germany or you go to the Netherlands, you have your red light district.
red light.
Everybody knows where it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you can do that. I mean, you can do that in Barbados too. I mean, you've got down Bridgetown a lot of derelict buildings, but one way to build them back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
you can restrict the
Empire would make
area and protect the area. Nobody in
Mhm.
San Pauli in Germany, which is where I was, where I live, and nobody in Rotterdam or in Amsterdam who's working, they do not fear for their lives. And it
No,
used to be that in St. Pauli in Germany, the police had to be very, very tall. Now they've gotten rid of the height restrictions because human rights and other people say, well, it's not fair that I can't work there. But those women are still protected. They are not afraid.
yeah.
And they put their red lights, those lanterns are out there. Everybody knows what it is. You see women walking down the streets in St. Pauli or in Amsterdam, what have you, no problem, even in Sweden. And they are protected. Barbados can do the same thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They don't
Mhm.
have to be next to the cathedral, which some of them are now.
Well, I mean,
Right.
the internet has also revolutionized the way that industry works,
Exactly.
Yeah.
especially with regard to, in Canada. In
Yeah, and with the
how,
escort services,
yeah, with the
it's
escort
the
services.
internet.
Yeah. I mean,
I,
they've nailed that.
I believe it is my opinion that some type of committee or some type of committee has to be formed with someone from the Ministry of Tourism, someone from finance, someone from, of course, from the church, someone
Health,
from investment.
health,
We need
health.
health.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, how could I forget that?
Yeah.
So we're
It's
going to
important.
need a committee of people from all these areas that will be impacted by this initiative if once it comes to fruition, and I think that when sex workers in Barbados realize that the government is serious about decriminalizing and they're making steps in that direction, I think you're going to see many of them coming forward to be acknowledged and to be counted so we can do a proper survey. We probably will never be able to do an exact,
No, there'll
counting,
always
but we
be
will
those
have
outside the fold.
right, we'll have a better position to gauge or a better guesstimate of what is
Mhm.
really happening out there. What are some of your thoughts on that consideration?
Well, I think that's true. You're never going. No one ever gets a complete view of anything that we're measuring. If we get an 80% return, we're going, my God, that's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah,
You're lucky if you get
yeah,
anything over 50%, you get a 60% return on anything. We're
yes,
happy. If you get
yes.
80, it's like, oh, it's the second coming. So you're never going to get 100%. That's a given. But for
Yeah.
me, the issue is not the money making aspects and the investment. That's for me, it's a human rights issue
Yeah.
is the health and safety of other human beings.
Yeah.
Nobody should lose their lives trying to make a living. For
Yeah.
me, it's not an investment thing. Let other people worry about that. For me, it's a human rights thing. This
Yeah.
You should not lose your life trying to put food on the table.
Yeah.
As far as as the church and others are concerned, that's not my area of expertise. So I don't involve myself in it. But I do think, well, it's not a matter of think, it's known worldwide, that in some instances, what some members of the church preach is not what they do.
Practice. Yeah.
And that is known well, right? You look at some of the mega churches in the United States where,
Yeah.
people are constantly being arrested because they violated the norms and morals which they have established for others, and
Mhm.
they have violated those sexual
They're
mores. And,
they're like prostitutes in their own right, in my
and
mind.
they're all right. I'm trying to be very delicate
Yeah, I'm
in the way I, in the
I'm
way
not.
I say.
They're,
I have no
they're,
doubt that those types of
exploiting their
people
person.
also exist in Barbados. Now, in terms of whether you need a committee to put this in place, I'm not convinced. I look back at when Prime Minister Motley decided that she was going to sanction, give her blessing to same sex unions. And
Yeah,
she said to the church, that's your thing over there. If they come into church and they want to get married by you, that's your domain. You want to say no, fine. Over here, this civil part is not yours.
no,
So, I mean, there is a room for
Mhm.
ministers Humphrey and Motley to actually, and of course, Minister Marshall, to use that path
yeah,
and say, this is what Barbados is going to be. The same way she said, Barbados is going to be a republic.
yeah,
We don't need to go and ask you. A lot of people say, you didn't come and ask me, since I told you. And you've known this for over 60 years. We
Yeah.
know
Yes. Mhm.
I mean, they could do that to say they could do it by decree and say, okay, church, you don't want to
Mhm.
bless them if they come in, fine.
Yeah.
No one's asking you to bless them. Uh,
Yeah.
but in terms of them making a living in Barbados, they can make a living.
yeah, yeah.
And you can establish an area similar to, you lived in Montreal, so you know this, that the area, the village of St. Catherine,
Mhm.
St. Laurent area, in
Yeah.
Germany, the St. Pauli area, in
Mhm.
the Netherlands, Rotterdam, mostly Amsterdam. It
Paris.
can be done. Paris,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. We're almost out of time, so I want to invite Jared to say a few words in response to that before we bring it to a close. Jared, any closing comments you
Well,
would like to
I think,
share
I
with
mean,
the viewers?
I hear you on the committee side of things. I honestly believe we have to engage UE. That's where I think it should start, and I think it's key, especially with regard to the sensitivity and the sensibility of the student population at UE, and inclusive of the women,
Mhm,
who I think would actually rally and champion this cause. Now,
mhm.
in terms of what can you bring to the government to get their appetite whet. I mean, this is really at the stage we're at. Is we need to give them numbers as Myrna alluded to, and we also have to be able to give them a sense that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
That's more important than the numbers, actually.
Yeah, and doing the right thing without the pressure of the strong religious lobby that exists in Barbados. I mean,
Mhm,
the church lobby is large. Granted, you may find that the majority of who I had called the most right wing of the church would lie um, in the arms of the DLP party as opposed to the BLP party. That's
mhm.
not to say that the BLP cannot be negligent of their
They're human beings.
yeah, they're human beings. But I think as Charlie said, last time, it strikes home when it's close to home.
Yeah,
You know, I think not that you want to make mileage out of the tragic situation that happened to this woman. I think it's important that we do keep this in the forefront and
absolutely.
not let it go into the back burner. And more importantly, I think that a degree of justice has to be served, and these gentlemen really need to be caught. I mean, if they can
Absolutely.
find the guy that shot these kids, 2 months ago up the hill, they can find these individuals who shot her.
Exactly.
It's a small island, unless they're
Yeah,
the foreigner,
there,
which I
but for the grace of God, it could have been your sister, your mother, your whatever. It could have been mine. You know,
Yeah.
right.
it's a human rights issue. It's
It is.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Well, at this point, we're going to have to bring the show to a close. We are almost out of time. We have been speaking with Dr. Myrna Lashley from Montreal, Canada. Also, Jared Antrobus joined us today, and it was an amazing discussion. I want to thank you both for joining me this evening. And I'm sure this is not going to be the end. At some point, I would love you to come back and talk about the progress we're making with this movement. And Jared, once again, thank you for the contribution you made tonight and the contributions you've made forever. I mean, we've had these
Many
discussions for so
many
long.
discussions, yeah.
Okay. But unfortunately, we've come to the end of this episode of the Charlie Spice Show. I want
Lashley,
to.
thank you, Charlie, and
Yeah. Mhm.
let's keep the flag flying.
Yes,
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I want to wish you both a wonderful evening and
me
thanks
too.
again for your contributions. And we'll continue speaking offline as we go forward in the future, I'm sure, and again online sometime. So
Yeah.
thanks again, and it's been a wonderful show. Lots of it was very informative. I feel inspired even more than I did yesterday and last year. Okay, so Dr. Lashley, thank you very much. You have a wonderful evening. Jared,
Thanks for
have a good
having
evening.
me.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
Doc.
Good night, gentlemen.
Bye.
Good night.